So the virtual water, the hidden water savings. So the 3 R's actually turned out to be pretty good as our, reduce consumption of stuff. Anything we're consuming required water to produce. You reuse, take old clothes. I mean, we all have probably, I don't know, maybe 1 million gallons worth of water sitting in our closets. So take it to a reuse store, a thrift store, and let somebody else use it. You don't need to have 1 million gallons of water just sitting in your closet. Similarly, when you're purchasing things, that's some of the things you have to, I think, keep in mind. We're hoping to do a number of things in our communities to, reuse tools, for instance, because again, those things all took a lot of water to produce. I don't know if you have restores here, so that's furniture and, building materials, all sorts of stuff that can be reused. Sometimes they're recovered from houses that are being renovated, and they can be reused for something else. Obviously, recycling, again, is less water savings there, because even recycling a plastic bottle takes water to make a new bottle or to recycle it into another product. Better to have a reusable container like this, or the water bottles, right? And I'm gonna, very nice. Switching diet, even just meatless Mondays, which has become, I guess, a bit of a fad. Meatless Mondays just means you and your family decide. At least 1 day a week. Anyways, you're not going to have meat. For some people, that's a big deal. And you can save 110,000 gallons for a family of 4. Now, avoiding food waste. Costco is probably the biggest problem here. People buying gigantic quantities of things. I know my brother is always talking about these loads of stuff he buys and what the prices were, but I swear half of it ends up being thrown out because you forget, or it's been in the freezer too long. That kind of thing. So the majority of food waste is actually at home, not in the fields. And 40% means 40% of the water it took to make all that food is also being wasted. And again, can't be reused. Again, shopping, when we're shopping, think about the price not just in terms of the dollars, but in terms of the water. Which gets us to need versus want. Do I really need something? So if you really need something, buy something that's going to last forever. I got, shoes that I've had for 25 years that I still wear because I bought a good pair that were comfortable and were very well made. And they certainly cost more than an average pair of, whatever, $9.95 somethings. So when you have to make a purchase, but buy something that's going to last for a long time. But it's the need versus want, which is a difficult thing for us because we're all exposed to 5,000 ads per day that's telling us we want this, we want that, and we want this other thing, and we will be a better person for it. In fact, I wrote an article just recently for Vice about bottled water marketing. So bottled water companies are clever. They basically promise us health and longevity, from drinking their product. There was one company that had basically saying, drink our water and you'll be young forever. That was the message of it. And we all, would like to live forever. We all have a fear of our own mortality. It's kind of a human thing. We're always sort of struggling with it. Most of the time we'd like to ignore it. And the advertisers are clever enough to prey on this to influence our buying decisions. So just beware. It's difficult to resist it, though. So finally, it takes a lot of water to make anything. I hope that's been clear. We're in a situation where there isn't enough to go around at the current pace that we're going. The good news is we can use a lot less water than we're using currently, because we haven't actually valued water in the way that we should. We haven't been smart about water. We hardly ever think about water as an important resource. When we're making decisions, let's say, to change, I don't know, a farm to a golf course, does anybody consider the water use? It happens very rarely. Golf course, we use a lot more water than a farm, or depending on the farm. But just when our sort of ordinary decisions made at the local level, water is rarely a factor in it, and that needs to change. And I think one of the bottom lines here is we need to respect and value water as sacred, because for almost all of human history, springs were considered sacred places. Ancient peoples and traditional peoples treated water as sacred, and to this day. So I had an experience in Australia where some Aborigines invited me to their camp, a remote camp way up in the northern part of Queensland, which is more dry tropical forest. And it's a camp, tents and things. No running water, no electricity, that kind of thing. And I was happy to be there. It was a bit of an honor to be there. But quickly it was like, oh, no running water, right? So it means I got to tromp through the jungle with buckets or jugs to get water from the stream. Now Australia has a more amenable climate in terms of temperature, but it's got a lot more dangerous things than Canada even does. So we're talking poisonous snakes, poisonous spiders, plants that'll paralyze you if you brush by them, that kind of thing. So going to get water was never easy. Not to mention it was heavy. And it seemed to me, I was going back and forth several times every day, bringing water for cooking and cleaning and drinking and all the rest of it. And so after a few days, I eventually complained about this a little bit. And they said, oh, well, you need to have change your perspective about water. So they took me to a waterfall, so a remote part of the bush, and there was a small waterfall, and they said, this is where we initiate our shamans, so the holy guys who do medicine work. And they said, well, one of the final initiations is the would-be shaman has to take this big rock and go down to the bottom of the waterfall pool and stay there and drown. So it's not when they come back, then they know that this is a true shaman, because the spirit of the waterfall, who has a very long, complicated name I can't remember, has deemed them worthy to be a shaman, and that they can connect with the spirit world. So to the Aborigines, this particular waterfall was its own particular spirit, which embodied certain things, medicine being one, health another. And they took this very seriously, although the current shaman said it's been a while since anybody had tried it. And he was a little bit nervous about the future, that the young people weren't quite as keen on trying this initiation ceremony, which I can hardly blame them. But it taught me the lesson that there are still people who treat water as sacred and see it as a spiritual thing. And when you really think about it, if you're running out of water, you do realize how important it is to us, just from a personal point of view, but also from our entire way of life, our entire society. So, the slide doesn't work. So that's my final slide here, which says we need to value water more, and that we need to also make sure we choose our leaders at all levels, not on the basis of their smile, but on the basis of their knowledge about how the world actually functions. We keep electing people who have no clue about how the world works, how everything's connected, how important water is, how important many of the things we're talking about here. It's just like, going up in a plane with somebody you picked at random to be the pilot. We'd never do that, but yet we are doing that with our local leaders as well as our business leaders. So that's the kind of thing we need to change. There's actually a group that's trying to, make all political leaders pass a ecological literacy test. It'd be nice, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. Um, it's a group in Germany, so if Germany gets it started, you know, maybe it could happen. So again, I hope you've come to see water is more valuable and useful than oil, and that you have gained a little water vision. And I hope you join me in being water wise and learning to respect and value water for what its true worth is to all of us. Thanks. One second.
You had to carry your water. How far were you carrying your water?
It was
like
about
a tenth of a mile, a quarter of a mile?
It was about 200 yards.
How many gallons you carry at a time? 2? Or did you have a huge bucket?
2 buckets, so...
5-gallon buckets, or?
I think not full. Yeah, 2 5-gallon buckets, but not full to the top because...
It's too heavy.
It's too heavy. My shoulders aren't what they used to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think every American needs to carry water at least a quarter of a mile, and then they'd have more respect for it.
Yeah, actually, in one of my presentations at school groups, I have kids piggyback each other around to say, okay, you just moved this much water. And it's always, you know, 1 or 2 kids who say, oh, yeah, I can do this. And get them back and forth a few times. I go, oh, no, do I have to still? Yeah, you still got to go a couple more times. Yeah.
Do you know about some seeds or plants which are cleaning, can clean water?
Seeds or plants that contain water, or?
That can clean water.
Oh, clean water.
Yes.
No, I don't. Do you?
I think I was hearing about some seeds, but I don't know which kind of seeds or plants this is.
No. Oh, there are plants that do clean water. Yeah, I think I see what you mean. So there's they call them constructed wetlands. So you can actually use plants that you would see in a marsh to clean water, and some small communities have actually used that instead of water treatment plants. They actually use plants to clean the water from sewage. And this is becoming more and more effective. It's actually cheaper to do, easier to maintain. It takes a little bit to figure out how to do it exactly right, but there are places that are doing it, yeah. And in a similar fashion, New York City gets its water pretty well untreated from, I guess it's the Catskills, because they've projected all the greenery up there. They didn't build a water treatment plant. They were planning to, I think it was 10 years ago. They weren't going to spend $6 or $8 billion to build a plant. They said, okay, we're just going to buy more land and make sure the farmers don't use any chemicals or fertilizers. And the other land they were going to preserve as its nature areas and let nature clean the water for. So in New York City, it's not the only city. Rio does the same thing. Vienna, there's a few other cities that actually don't treat their water because they've protected the land nearby.
You were talking about ecological literacy. Is the university in general on this problem? Because I think there is a lot of ignorance, really. People don't know.
Yeah, generally not. If you go into an environmental program, yes, you will learn something about that. But if you're in an MBA program, no, you're not going to learn about that. So part of the problem is we've divided up. We said the environment is just this one narrow specialty. And it's not. The environment is everything.
Exactly. It should be really
yeah,
more important.
It's pretty crazy, but that's the way we've set up our academic institutions. It should be a basic thing that you learn at a very young age, and it continues through our education system, but it doesn't. It ends up being just a narrow specialty, which ends up creating a lot of problems we have. People can't talk to each other because the environmental scientist, let's say, understands ecology, talking to the business person, and their languages are almost incomprehensible to each other. So this is not a good situation. So it means we need more and more people to become ecologically aware as well.
And usually the countries that have a larger problem are the ones they are poor countries, so they don't have the power to spread the word.
Yeah. Albeit, a lot of things that some poor countries do, which are considered backward, are better ecologically than the modern ways. So a lot of farmers who do things in Africa, like traditional way of multiple types of plants together, that's considered inefficient farming by modern standards. And when a student from, say, Nigeria comes to the US to learn about farming, they learn our way, and then he goes back and he tells, and it's almost always a he, tells the women farmers, because it's usually women farmers in Africa, you're doing it all wrong, it's all backwards, you can't do that, you gotta plant one crop, and you get some fertilizer, and you put some chemicals on, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's some real big disconnects in the way we're doing farming, and you know, some of the traditional ways actually made a lot more sense than the modern ways.
Yes, hi. I wanted to say something about the wetlands, and that's our natural filtering to clean the waters that go into the rivers and into the bays and eventually into the oceans. And out east on Long Island, we've become very conscious of that because the Peconic River going out into the Peconic Bay is in serious trouble with high nitrogen levels right now. And so in everything we're doing out there, we're working on keeping the wetlands clean and trying to clean up the river. It's really a mess out there. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is that, could you say something about collecting rainwater and what we can do with that?
Yeah, so great to hear that you guys are involved in trying to keep the shoreline vegetation healthy and growing. I mean, some places, anywhere along the water in Canada, you can't have a lawn, it has to be natural, so you can't have grass. So, because it's, for those very reasons, to keep the nitrates out of the water. Your second question was about?
Rainwater, collecting
rainwater. Yeah, no, it's a great way to save water. I've got a rain barrel at home. We use it for the garden. It's dead easy to do. You know, everybody's got a downspout, and you plug it in, and there's lots of great products you can make your own too. I had an old whiskey barrel for a long time until it fell apart. Yeah, yes. At first, it had a little odd flavor, but it's a fabulous way to do it. There's even much better systems that have underground storage tanks in Australia. That's what they use. Because it's Australia. Good parts of Australia are very dry. And so they have huge, like the size of a swimming pool, underground tank for storing water. And they can also use that water for washing and showers. Not for drinking, but that's their system. And I think a lot of places in California are developing the same kinds of reusing rainwater as well as reusing gray water. Again, water from, say, your sink. You can use it to water your plants.
In your opinion, which is the best water for health consumption? We get water from bottled water, tap water, filtered water, reverse osmosis water, but for human consumption and health-wise, have you seen anything that you would recommend? We got well water, we got everything, spring water.
Yeah, that's a good question because water is highly variable depending on where you are. Because water, you know, absorbs most things. I get my water from a spring. So this is just kind of a fortuitous circumstance where there's a spring not far from my house where the water actually comes right out of the ground, and it's a nature reserve. And so, yeah, that's where I get my drinking water from. And that's not something everybody can do because you're not in, you know, fortunate situation. Yeah, and the water's fabulous. Other places have, you know, good quality drinking water. Like New York City is supposed to have some of the best drinking water right from the tap. It really depends on where you are. Other places like the Midwest, like Kansas, a lot of the drinking water has got nitrates in it from all the fertilizers. It's hard to remove it. Some places have had to put special filtration in to get rid of it. It's, you know, it's not healthy for you. The bottled water industry, you have to be a very educated consumer because a lot of companies, say mainstream companies anyways, they sell you tap water for, 10 times the price or 100 times the price that you could get it from the tap yourself. So you got to know who you're dealing with. I don't know this particular company, but Stephen says they're the real deal, and so effectively, it sounds like they're doing what I'm doing at home. I have my glass jugs. I trot them down to the spring. I fill it up, the dozen jugs or whatever, and I take them away. Sounds like they're doing something similar, just making it more accessible to everybody. This spring has not become commercialized yet. I hope it doesn't. But those are some of the choices. And filtration, yeah. There's filtration and distillation can all be useful depending on your circumstances, depending on your water resource that you happen to have.
So where would we go to find spring water in California?
I can't say I know in California. There's probably some place where you could get spring water. It's not impossible, but I'm afraid I don't know. Yeah.
There's actually a website called Find a Spring that you can go on the internet, and it's actually There's actually a website called Find a Spring where users go into that website and they put in springs that they know about, and you can actually locate it. It's throughout the world, actually.
Huh. Well, thanks. I never knew that. That's cool.
Israel being a very innovative and at the same time very dry country as well with minimal rain. How do they sustain their agriculture, or how do they actually conserve water? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, you're right. Israel did pioneer a lot of stuff when it comes to water saving. So one of the things they do is drip irrigation. So that's like having a thin pipe that goes down the rows of the plants, and it's got a little hole by each plant, and it drips water right directly onto the plant or onto the base of the plant. So that minimizes the evaporation, which is a big problem in Israel, which is, again, desert. And you also precisely put the water, right to the roots of the plant. And so that system is way more efficient than any other form of irrigation. So that's one thing they do. They also use like composts and things to, keep the soil cooler as well as keep the moisture inside the earth. Again, maximizing the efficiency of the water that they do put down.
The other thing I heard some time ago, I don't know whether it's true or not, they're saying that the Negev desert is actually becoming smaller rather than bigger. Is that true? Some time ago I heard that that's the only desert in the world where it's actually shrinking.
That I don't know anything about, I'm afraid. I don't know why that would be happening, but could be they're farming parts of the desert, maybe that's what they mean. That whole area in the Middle East is getting drier and drier. It's not getting wetter. The temperatures there have been super hot in the last few years, 120, 130 degrees. It's tough. That's making it more difficult to grow plants there, just because the temperatures are getting so high. Yeah.
I want to make a comment. So, of course, we know we are a consumeristic society. So we are seen as not normal if we don't change a phone every, 2 years, and I could go on and on and on. So that's one thing. Most people want to fit in, and they won't change because they just don't want to be different. Then the other thing is needs versus wants that you touched on. And one of the things that people think it's a need, it's a want, animal foods. So everything derived from animals, all animal foods, are really a want for taste. So Meatless Monday is not going to work. So Dr. Oppenlander is not here to talk about it, and Meatless Mondays from environmental standpoint, you are saving the world one day of the week and killing it the other 6. And from ethical standpoint of view, you are needlessly exploiting sentient beings 6 days of a week. And then even on Meatless Mondays, increase of consumption of dairy and eggs, consumption of dairy and eggs increased. So you're really not doing much for ethical reasons or the planet. And sustainable animal products is not a thing, because if we look at the grazed beef, that is, yes, using less water, but it's using more land. So at that point, you're using more land, and as my friend over here reminded me, 400 gallons of water to process 1 carcass of cow. So we need to start, and I'm a scientist involved in medical business, so we shouldn't look, so they're looking at medicine as a liver and a heart and breast as breast cancer and everything separate. So we are not, we are a human being in an environment interacting with animals. So we should start looking at, and what you said, it's true. I mean, I was trained as a molecular biologist. I shouldn't look at anything else. This is what they're like. Right now I have the luck to be interacting with the community psychologist. We are trying to change the world. But I mean, it just, and he will do good things. This is what I know. And I turned him vegan. So he's seeing things from a different perspective. So just that's, I mean, I don't know if you want to add something to it, but this is just, I mean, because Dr. Oppenlander opened my eyes after I turned vegan. And I just, I mean, this is what I think a lot of people should really think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Those are quite true. When it comes to even grass-fed beef, it's still a problem of land use. It still uses a lot of water. It's still a climate problem, even though it's better than the other forms of production. I mean, these are, as you say, more of a Band-Aid solution to what the real problems are. I used to be an ag reporter, so I have been inside slaughterhouses and factory farms and all those places many years ago. And it's, nobody really wants to be there, including the animals. And so they shouldn't be there. So yes, there's a lot of advantages to shifting to vegetarian and veganism. There's more and more athletes actually now saying this is the best thing they ever did, professional athletes. So I think that's actually starting to change. Definitely in the US, meat consumption is down, also in Europe. So I think there's a turn that's happened, and it's a important turn. Is it happening fast enough? No, but we have to be patient sometimes with some folks. As I say, for some people, I tell you, I couldn't believe the number of people who were like, about Meatless Mondays going, well, I could never do that. Seriously, I was flabbergasted too. I went, what? Said, oh, yeah. My sons would never accept that. It's like, whoa, okay, you're in charge there, Mom. Any other questions?
Yes, right here.
Oh,
well, just a statement to that. Even the Catholics a long time ago during Lent would give up meat for a day, but then they went to fish. So,
yeah.
I empathize with you about carrying water. Living in Alaska, we many bush communities, dry cabins, living that way. Well, actually, our home while we were building it was semi-remote, and it remained dry for a long time, and so we hauled a lot of water. So we learned then how important water is. But do you have any numbers pertaining to a vegan diet as opposed to a vegetarian diet?
No, I don't. I didn't get into that. That would be really interesting. I don't know if I could work it out. I can't work it out right now in my head, but I think I could figure out how to do it, yeah. But yeah, it would be at least 10% less than, say, the vegetarian.
Okay.
Because of the eggs and milk, yeah, at least 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the question is 2090, that number you had up there with the
Yeah.
map of the, does this projection include aquifers too? Like, are they going to disappear also in the ground?
Yeah, yes, because probably well before then, because almost all the aquifers are oversubscribed, meaning we're taking out way more water than they can be replenished. The Ogala, that's probably the Ogala one, the big giant one in the Midwest, it's dropping, many feet per year. It's one of the industries that's sucking a lot of water out is the energy industry, the fracking guys. So they use 5 million gallons per frack. Sometimes a well's fracked a couple of times. And that water is contaminated and then has to be pumped underground. Very little is recycled, reused. And that water is pumped deep underground, away from aquifers, because it would just contaminate them. And so that's a permanent loss of water from the water cycle. So this process of getting gas and oil using fracking is probably the biggest permanent removal of water in human history. Because most other times it's actually really hard to get rid of water out of the global water cycle.
You talked earlier about a program to replace your lawn. They'll pay you. Do you go to your city for that? Do you go to a website for that? Who do you talk to for that?
It's cities, communities, yeah, out west, like Las Vegas is one that does it. Yeah, I'm not sure if there might be something in some communities in California.
You were talking about fracking, and that's something that is a major problem, and even more of a problem that we know, because not only is it water, but it's also they use corrects at 9500. In other words, that they pump with the water down. In other words, to scrub and use the bubbles that are used as hydraulics. In other words, to pull that water out. And if anyone doesn't know what corrects at 9500 is, they need to look it up, because what's happening is not only are they using this water, but they are making it unavailable for human consumption, period.
Yeah, that's true. The process involves dumping a lot of nasty chemicals, that being one of them, to make this whole thing work. And so that's why that's why so little of it's reused or recycled, because they can't even use it because it's so bad, and makes it extremely difficult to clean up. Any other questions? Thanks. Thank you.